We do have the voice of the Mavs guest hosting today, Mark Followill. Mark, where do you kind of put this offseason in the pantheon of Mavs offseasons? Is this a confidence-building one, an inspiring one, a wait-and-see one? Where do you kind of qualify it as, as it relates to summers past?
Well, I qualify it as one of sweeping change and the beginning of a new era and the beginning of a new direction. That would be probably the best way I could characterize it. Is obviously it's an offseason of major change. And with major change, there's a new approach and a new way of doing things. And it seems like that there's a very clear pathway that's laid out, and that there's one individual who came out in a very confident, engaging, but make no mistake about it, very strong way in a press conference that was on the airwaves of the Ultimate Dallas Sports Show back in, I think, May the 20th. I think May the 20th
keep track. It's like the strikeout counter. How many plugs?
Get him on the
Be
payroll.
like Roger Clemens here.
That's right.
Or Gary Wood, 20 Ks in a game.
Yeah.
So when Masai had his press conference and you guys streamed it live, I think May 20th was the date on that, after the mutual parting of ways of Jason Kidd. And when Masai said at the end that, be patient with us, we're going to communicate with you, but understand that I'm the one making the decisions and I am the one responsible for the decisions that we make. To have that kind of communication and that kind of like confident, empowered, strong, confident, I already said that, so please allow myself to introduce myself. To have
Austin
that
Powers.
to have that kind of level of communication, I think was great. So it's an offseason of massive change. To get back to your initial question, that's how I would characterize it, is that it's the beginning of laying the foundation. I guess the foundation was laid last year with Cooper Flagg being here, but now there is an individual at the top of the organization who says he's going to be responsible for all the decisions, and who said that kings come and kings go, and a king went, but we've got a little prince that we're going to make a king. And so everything that's happening is all around the building around Cooper Flagg and the Cooper Flagg timeline, and how can we add talent to the roster that's going to maximize what we think he's capable of doing when he becomes the elite, totally best version of himself in the years ahead.
That King line was just an absolute bar, and I think that endeared,
It was.
endeared a lot of Mavericks fans to Masai, because there
was such a worldly perspective on it. Yeah.
To not acknowledge the past,
Of course.
would have been wrong.
Of course.
And I just, that press conference, I think, got a lot of people back on board. Maybe not everybody, because there's just going to be people that are going to be in their feelings no matter what. But that press conference certainly got a lot of people back on the boat. As it relates to this Mavs team, my question, Mark, is I look at the roster, and you and I could probably play guard by midseason if there's some injuries. So what do you make of kind of the personnel decisions? They have had they've made a lot of changes there in just short order, bringing in some international talent, some guys that are also NBA vets, but it just seems like this roster is a lot more foreign-born now than it was previously.
Well, I think some of that is that you've got a new general manager in Mike Schmitz, who, of course, has left no stone unturned. He was one of the premier individuals in the NBA draft industrial complex in terms of scouting and doing player profiles and feeding that vast appetite that exists for who are the players. I mean, think of the NBA draft and how much, and then triple it, because the NFL draft is 7 rounds long. The NBA draft is just 2 rounds long. I mean, and even this week, I found myself gravitating towards watching some things about the Major League Baseball draft this weekend as well. They've really changed the vibe of what that's like, and they've made it a much more TV-friendly production now. So the Major League Baseball draft is even becoming more interesting, even though that intellectually you're not going to see a lot of those players for a long time, but it's become a lot better TV event. So Mike has been analyzing players for essentially 15 years. doing it as a media scouting person for draft websites, and then moving obviously into a Portland Trailblazers assistant general manager role for 4 seasons and now with the Mavs. So I think Mike has his hands over every potential stone that needs to be turned over to look for talent all around the globe right now. And when I look at, I think there is a theme with the players that the Mavs have added this offseason, and that is younger players. I think nobody older than the age of 25, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe I'm missing somebody, but I think everybody, there's 2 first-round draft picks and 3 players acquired in a trade last week, and we'll see what happens. I know 1 second-round pick, Toby Lawal, got signed to a 2-way contract. We'll see what they end up doing with Ischenko. But everybody that's been brought in are all players that are in their mid-20s or younger. So it fits with the timeline, and they're players who can help space the floor, which, look, they're not going to give us all of the strategy at the press conference, but obviously Masai said, look, we need to put shooting around Cooper Flagg to take advantage of his ability to drive the ball and the attention that he's going to draw from opposing defenses. And Kyrie Irving is going to create shots for other people as well. So, look, you have to make threes in the NBA these days. The Mavs were one of the worst three-point shooting teams in the league last year in percentage and in volume of attempts. So that's an area that had to change. And then they're getting players in who have some defensive chops as well, can play on that end of the floor, who have size, who have positional versatility. I mean, there's a theme, whether it's, leaning into the international thing that you're talking about, Jonah, or just I think if you look at the collection of players that were added, there are general themes that you can look at with age, skill set, versatility, shooting, the ability to be multi-positional on the defensive end of the floor. Not to say that every player checks every box, but they do every player checks a significant portion of those boxes. So I think, number one, you're adding players like that, and I think that's good. And then to get to your point specifically about guard play, look, I don't take very much from Summer League. So Brian Damaris and I recorded a podcast today, our Take That With You podcast for the Mavs, and we talked about the first couple of Summer League games, and I said, I remember reading someone say in 2018 after Summer League, I saw all I needed to see from Jalen Brunson. That guy doesn't have it. It's a waste of time. So I do not get very much into making any sort of big takes coming away from Summer League. But I did go watch practice a couple of days last week before they left. And I really like Sergio De La Rey. I think De La Rey is going to – now, look, he's going to have bumps in the road as a rookie, but he's going to come in and he's going to play. He's going to be someone who's going to fill some of those guard minutes. Obviously, Kyrie is back, but I think we can safely assume he's not going – they're going to have to be smart with how they manage him coming off an ACL. So he's not going to soak up every minute at guard. But I think Marcus Sasser is a really intriguing guy that they brought in to play guard as well. Now, Marcus Sasser has only played 2,600 minutes in 3 seasons in the league. That is what a healthy starter should play in 1 season. Think about it. If you're healthy enough to play 80 games and a starter plays 32, 33 minutes a game or more, I mean, these days, the guys that lead, it's not like it used to be. The guys that lead the league in minutes these days are only playing like 37 to 38 minutes a game. When there used to be 25 guys. When I started, there were 25 to 30 or even more than that playing 40-plus minutes per game that qualified for league leaders. So the load management part of it has changed from that regard. But you're still, if you're a starter and you're healthy, you're going to play over 2,600 minutes in 1 season. Marcus Sasser's played Dallas guy, Red Oak High School, 2,600 minutes in 3 seasons. He needs to come here and develop. I mean, he needs to come here and get a shot. He needs to come here and show what he's got. And I think that when you look at the Mavs, what I like about acquisitions like that, and none of these, look, all of these are not going to hit, but I think you have to throw numbers at it. And I've held this up in various formats as an example that I like for team building. Because they have limited draft capital, you're going to have to win on the margins in areas like this. The Atlanta Hawks brought in 2 players in consecutive seasons now that were young and ready to step into larger roles with their team and won Most Improved Player of the Year. Dyson Daniels did it 2 seasons ago, and Nickeil Alexander-Walker did it last season. I would love if the Mavericks acquired somebody this year that is a candidate to win Most Improved Player of the Year next season. But even if they're not, I think that's the kind of mentality that you have to have, is that you've got to be creative in your talent acquisition strategy due to the fact that we all can look on the internet and see that their draft assets moving forward are limited.
Right.
Not to say that they're not going to try to do everything they can to fill that cupboard back up to the best of their ability, but you're going to have to take some swings on guys like Marcus Sasser hasn't developed in the Detroit ecosystem for whatever reason. We see something in him. We project something. Let's get him in our ecosystem and see if we can develop him to what we think his potential is. And hopefully it works out. We'll see. But to your point, you were asking about guard. And so I think those are some candidates to play meaningful guard minutes for the Mavs this year. And Nembhard's part of the equation as well after his rookie season last year, too.
And if it doesn't work out, then Mark can come off the bench for games 80, 81, 82. He can just, leave his spot on the sideline and then just hop in there, get some shots up.
Basketball's not really my skill. My one skill, athletically speaking, is running for a long period of time. So
a distance runner.
That's my skill. Running for at 55 years old, getting 4 or 5 miles in a few days a week. So yeah.
You brought up patience though, where Masai is concerned. I'm just curious because it took a lot longer, I think, than most of us thought to find the head coach for this team moving forward. But all of a sudden, you get the Dusty May hire, and then a couple days later, you draft a guy out of Michigan, and Morris Johnson Jr. I'm curious that timeline. What did you make of that specifically? Obviously, him specifically taking as much time as he did to make the decision, but also kind of doubling down on the Michigan of it all. And what have you seen from Morez? And I get it, it's summer league.
Yeah.
But he seems to have at least have put enough on tape to get some Mavs fans excited.
Well, look, he can defend, and obviously he's going to have to work on. Now, summer league is so different, and you get so many fouls, and so he's probably doing things in summer league that he wouldn't do in an NBA game.
Right.
But defending without fouling, of course, is going to be one area of improvement. But he's obviously going to play at a very high competitive level on that end of the floor and impact the game on that end of the floor. It was nice to see in his first game that and I felt like this would always be the case, but there's more to do, and there's room for his game to expand and be enhanced on the offensive end of the floor. And I don't get too wrapped up, like in the same case with De La Rey at Valencia and in the case of Morris Johnson at Michigan. I'm not too super focused on their stats where they were, because I think Johnson averaged 13 points a game at Michigan. De La Rey averaged the 10 points a game that he averaged at Valencia, but that was a league champion in Spain. Obviously a national champion at Michigan. So the counting stats thing, if you're getting your stats within the context of winning, that's way more important to me. And if the points could have been 17, but you weren't winning, and the points are 13 and you are winning, then that's way more important to me. But then you get in this setup the other day, in this framework of Summer League. I mean, it's obvious that he's got room for his game to grow on offense. So that's a positive. As far as the taking time to hire the new head coach, I mean, it's a very, very important hire. And you're coming into such a unique situation where, as we said, you're building around a young player. And you are trying to develop young players. And I read, and I will answer your question, and I think that a couple of things. Dusty May has been, from what I understand, I didn't see this, but I saw him at practice last week, and he was engaged in practice. He wasn't running the practice. The Summer League coach, Joe Boylan, was. But Dusty was, talking to players and, not angrily pointing out if they made a mistake, but there was some gentle correction and things of that nature. But more importantly, he was, from my understanding, coming up to the gym at night, working with guys who were getting post-practice, well after practice. Like, practice is done, go get something to eat, and then maybe come back down to the floor and work on some very individual specific things that aren't going to be the focus during a team-oriented practice. And Dusty was down there working with those guys. And that's just not something you see out of the head coach of the NBA level very, very often. Like, occasionally I saw Rick do that. Occasionally I saw Jay Kidd do that. But to see him investing in the relationship building part of it is really important. And I read an article from the Summer League coach, Joe Boylan, who's been a development coach with several other teams. He's been a player development coach. And he wrote a long article in The Athletic a few months ago talking about player development concepts in the NBA and the analytics-driven revolution that's happened in the NBA. And there's a stat for essentially everything. But he said, one area that we're still trying to quantify, and so think about this, and I think this is going to be a really important part of the mindset of the organization, and that is we can quantify production, but we haven't totally figured out a way to quantify what you make possible by your presence on the floor. In other words, if you're a really good three-point shooter it's not all about the 3-point shots that you make and the 3-point shot and the points that you score.
The gravity.
Consequently,
Yeah.
it's the gravity of it. Yes, it's the spacing that you create. So there is a really intriguing high level of thought process that I think is going into organizational philosophy, which is probably part of the reason why it took a long time to get the head coach thing settled, because I think that in one of Masai's, either was his first press conference or maybe it was in the second press conference that aired right here on the Ultimate Dallas Sports Show, that where I saw it. Yep, at 12:29, I got that in, by the way. Yeah, just so we know. So for future reference, whenever you need to make the promo. But he said, he being Masai, said, we have in this organization structure, vision, and alignment. And so you want somebody that obviously is going to fit within the structure, vision, and alignment that you have in place through the ladders of your organization. So I think that's a really intriguing way that it seems like this organizational philosophy is going to be forward, is we're not just going to judge players on their counting stats production, which I don't think that that's how it was done before.
No.
But there's just, it's out there in paper that the guy who's going to be a big component of player development is all about the next advancement we need to make analytically speaking, and how we evaluate players is not just look at what they produce, but what they make possible by their presence.
Yeah,
So
it's part of the analytical wave. And you look at some of their personnel moves, bringing in bigs who can shoot the three. I mean, when you have guys like
Aldama.
when you got guys like Kyrie and Coop, where a lot of their production is going downhill, need to have bigs that are able to space the floor and kind of create that. So you've started to see that migration a little bit with their personnel.